Welcome to Musing with Tanya D podcast. Once again, I am your host, a practicing holistic shaman, medium, and otherworldly life coach and subtle energetic surgeon. My intention is to utilize the power of indigenous technologies, the ancient wisdom of our bones, our original divine blueprint to navigate through our soul's harmonic, the realm of the elementals, the elemental highway, into and through the imaginal realm, possibly reintroducing you to the magical being I believe resides within each and every one of us, unique and as individual as our thumbprint, through these subtle realms and bodies, the energetic anatomy to raise our frequency to the prime directive, to our inner genius, our personal medicine. I do call myself a holistic Sha medium, which is a choreography of merging them all. My name is Tanya D, and welcome to my podcast, Medicine Room. I do go live on YouTube at Tanya D for a daily snippet. Each day, I share the element of the day coming from the 4 pillars of Chinese astrology or destiny. These 4 pillars are actually a gateway into the realm of your personal elemental highway, and you may be wondering or pondering why that's so very important. Well, once you understand or have an idea of the elementals, you can then utilize them for healing a variety of symptoms and conditions and balancing our personal elements with our gift and our purpose, our prime directive, whether it's our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, our spirit, our mental academy, energy, vitality, transformation, and so much more. It's all part of the cosmic soup. The spirit that resides within each element is also a part of our elemental structure or foundation, along with these subtle energies, bodies, and fields, and cosmic insights, messages, and so much more, might I add. So going beyond being inspired and just loving the season of the witches, nature's transformation, the magic, the variety of guests that I've actually had and literally enjoyed during the season, this podcast season. That's why I do title the show The Musing with Tanya D, because it's about musing. So if there's anybody that you wish to hear from again that really got you excited about life and really your own magical essence that resides within each and every one of us, please comment and share and let me know. And of course, stay curious, questioning everything. That is also one of my mantras. This week's guest artist is Rasa Priya. He has this unique sacred sound. He's the sacred sound alchemist who has practiced these healing arts for more than 30 years. His approach is original, artistic, and beautifully etherically, I would say, creative. He combines spirituality, quantum healing, mindfulness, science, art, and various styles of music in order to create a vibrationally sacred space for a deep healing journey. Many who experience Rasa's style of work have transformed their lives through self-realization, self-acceptance, self-love, and healing from old wounds. And as a side note, Rasa grew up in an abusive home. He sought playing music as a way to escape. So early on, he was recognized by his music teachers as gifted and was even featured in public performances after only 1 month of instruction. So as a young teen, he struggled to find his way out into the world, troubled by the ways of the human condition and the state of world affairs. After some time, he eventually turned to spirituality as a way to heal this internal conflict. Combining music and spirituality seemed like the perfect match. Music actually allowed the freedom of creative exploration, expression beyond those rigid constraints of his limited conditioning and perception. So his desire for service then led him into healthcare, where he earned degrees in respiratory therapy, nursing, and as a healthcare worker, he then discovered the relationship between wellness and internal conflict. He observed how much perspective and thoughts seem to influence body chemistry along with health, And he was often frustrated with the superficial approach and those limitations of Western medicine. In Western medicine, we mostly treat symptoms. Rarely do we address the root cause of the suffering, he explains. And searching for answers, both professionally and personally, he journeyed to India, where he stayed in temples, studying meditation, spirituality, and music related to spiritual cultivation. His interest in spirituality and music continued. He created and crafted a kirtan chanting band and ended up playing mostly for small gigs or festivals. After many years, he then left the healthcare industry and devoted himself fully to his lifelong dream of music and healing. At a very young age, he started having unusual experiences as a child, and his parents recall him seeing and speaking to a being that they could not see, but thought of it as a creation of a normal childhood imagination. And by the age of 7, he had a series of dreams and visions that appeared very otherworldly. And you know how I am when it comes to the other world. Many of these things he saw he could not understand at that time, like most of us. He could not make sense of them until now. He does a recall in one vision, which we will share in this episode. And then also, as a side note, he currently lives on the beautiful island of Maui along with his beautiful wife and son. Rasa now devotes all of his energy helping others discover deeper parts of themselves, along with their intuition, sensitivity, creativity, and really how to move away from the mental filters of our modernity of this conditioning. With all of that, let's welcome Rasa. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Ah,
I'm in Utah. I'm ready for this year of transformation that we're diving into.
oh, yeah. It's really starting to happen, isn't it?
I find humanity tries to hang on to items, whatever you want to call it, that no longer serve us because they're familiar with it. And the magic is really on the other side in the unfamiliar,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
just allowing and having trusting and having faith.
Yeah, I think that is the key. Once we get out of our own way, like you just said, there is so much available. So much amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it gives me chills, like just knowing, just calling in spirit at will when you can feel goosebumps without having goosebumps kind of a sensation. I don't know what I'm saying, but that's kind of what it feels like.
I know what you're saying.
So, can you tell my audience a little bit about your journey? Like, how did you really get into sound healing? And
Yeah, sure. Well, it started off from my wounding actually. When I was a small child, I was abused and without my real mother for various reasons. She got into some trouble. She got on heroin and things. And, I was ended up with my stepmother. And I suffered a lot of different kinds of abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse. I remember getting beat in front of, the girls, my classmates, which were Girl Scouts or something like that at the time. And it was just really humiliating. And anyways, as a way to escape that healing, I went to music. I picked up a guitar and started just plucking around and learning the guitar. And so that was my safe space. At the same time, while when I was a child, I've had a series of events and things that I could not understand. I actually believe that we all have this, but we are steered away from those experiences and to believe that maybe it's our mind, we're talking to imaginary friends, whatever it may be. The only thing that was hard for me to really, I mean, I could, okay, maybe I'm having an imaginary friend, but the thing that I could not ever get an answer to was I was having some visions that were very deep, things that a lot of the adults around me could not even understand. So, and the content, not just having the visions, but the actual content, what was being shared at the time, it was not comprehensible by the people around me, my adults, my parents. So, anyways, that was my experience. And as I became older, I pursued both music and my spirituality. I eventually landed up staying in India in temples and studying the mridanga and chanting, and really just diving into that merge of music and spirituality and what that actually means and what that looks like. And so that was part of my journey. After some time in India, I came back to, the States here, and I pursued a kirtan band, the mantra kind of call and response type of thing. And I really enjoyed that for a while, but I still was very wounded. I was coming from a wounding. So, my intentions weren't always exactly, pure. And I still had a lot of expressing of wounding at that time. To kind of get to it, I actually stopped that for a while and really had to spend time with myself to really evaluate what was important. And I can say, and I forgot to mention, along that journey, I had become a respiratory therapist and become educated also as a registered nurse. So I was already into the area of service, healing service. Then to bring it all together to this moment for me represents all those paths, all the pursuits, my wounding, my healing, the process that I went through, the time I spent as a nurse, as a respiratory therapist, the time I spent in nursing school, all of that right now has led me to this very point. And in this moment, I can honestly say, I just retired from respiratory therapy about 2.5 years ago. And I just took the plunge. It was during COVID and I was scared. And, my wife and I were making really good money being in the hospital together, and our son's in Montessori school. So I had fear that I would not make enough money to support my house, the way that I want to live, my son's education, etc. And those are real concerns, but I could no longer stand to hide, and I think this is happening for so many of us. And to really allow who we honestly are, and really trust in that connection, because it is fully trustworthy. We are fully trustworthy, And so when I did that, it was just beautiful. I love everything that I do now. Everything that I do, I'm fully in love with. It doesn't mean that I'm a perfect person and I don't have bad days like, the human days like the rest of us, but all of those things, even the tough times, I fully embrace. It's like, yes, bring it on. I want you. Come on, let's dance, And in that surrender, I'm finding just amazing things. I'm remembering things about my past. I'm remembering moments that I've had. And I really feel this is true for every one of us. We all get seeds that can inspire us and lead us into this present moment. Those things that we all experience, they're not fake. Okay. Even if they were done on like drugs. Okay. Like for me, when I was a teenager, hey, full of hate, full of anger, I was looking for some kind of death. I did a bunch of drugs, a lot, especially hallucinogenics. The thing was, I never really did it just to have fun. Okay. Like mushrooms and acid. It wasn't about just having fun and having fun with my friends. For me, it was always a spiritual experience. And this is something that happened to me yesterday. Okay. I was getting ready to do a couple sound healings. And all of a sudden I was down, like just going through some mantras and things. Everything started changing. I felt like I was going through a hallucination that I remembered from childhood. Okay. I even went upstairs and asked my wife, hey, something's up here. I don't feel normal. And she was looking at me. She thought I looked a little funny in my color. There were some concerns. But here's what was different. When I was doing those hallucinogenics and I would have things come to me, powers come to me, or things that I was, experiencing, I would get really scared. And at that time, I had a lot of programming about good and evil. I really embraced the Christian perspective. So I had a lot of judgment about those kind of things. And I became very fearful when it got too close. I remember like yelling, going, no, no. It was like I was going to be overtaken by some kind of thing. I also remember finally submitting and say, okay, you know what? I can't run from this. Go ahead and take me. The minute that I allowed that to just say, go ahead, do what you got to do, I became free. And so what I noticed yesterday, as I was experiencing these things that I had experienced from childhood, okay, these different realms, these different abilities, these different kinds of things, I was not fearful. I knew that I was not in fear at all. I just sat with it. The only thing I was concerned was, can I show up for my clients that are coming? Can I show up for this sound healing without being too far out there? And thank God my wife, Sarah, was able to be with me yesterday and keep things grounded, because I was just super excited. It's like, oh my gosh, you mean everything that I had experienced is already who I am? I'm just remembering. It wasn't just a hallucination. Like we're going to degrade it, right? Oh, you just had a hallucination. You had a psychotic episode. No, absolutely not. This is real stuff. And what excites me is because it's in me, I know it's in everyone else too, and it's so encouraging. The seeds of experience that we have, no matter how much we judge them, they can lead us to so much if we get out of the way of our judgment, of our minds, of our filters. So presently, I'm super excited right now. I'm just really super excited because, we all need one another so much to be able to go into who they already are. We're not asking for anything foreign. Just embrace who you honestly, truthfully are. There is nothing wrong with any of us, even though we make mistakes, even though we express our wounding in the way that we do. Okay, yes, we're going to mess up several times. So what? If we can allow that, if we can be humble enough to allow those errors, how rich is that?
Ah, take a breath and a pause. That's beautiful. I love it. I
Yeah,
really do believe there's magic on the other side of fear. And often fear is just false evidence affecting our reality and some sort of conditioning. And I
yeah,
too remember when I was younger, I had I had an experience. I was in the backyard. We grew up on a farm and I literally knew this being was there watching me. And I wasn't afraid, but I do remember when I came in and told my mom about it, this spiritual moment, she kind of did like this warning, but I was like, no, it didn't feel scary. So it was like, even as a little kid, I knew I was okay. Can you dive into your sound healing and like your technique and the
sure,
uniqueness of it?
sure. So, a lot of the sound healings in my observation are based on love and light, really providing that blissful experience for people to relax. And it's really great. It's really nice to just be able to lay down and go deep and relax. But I think because of my path and because of what I have at the core, our sound healings are very different. We don't just go to love and light. We provide a soundscape that is fully dynamic, going into the shadows, going into the uncomfortable areas, going into all those places, because we believe that that whole spectrum of who we are, if we can integrate that, especially the shadows, the things that we're afraid of, the things that we're afraid to look at within our own selves, the things that we see in others that we reject, okay? All those things, if we can dismantle that, there's so much freedom, so much beauty. So one of the things that we do with our sound healing is we bring in world instruments. I'll bring in something called raga, a North Indian classical. I was trained in North Indian classical music by my teachers. Well, my teacher's teacher was Ali Akbar Khan, and my teacher was Ross Kent. So I studied North Indian classical music, which is designed to provoke emotions. That's what the music is all about, emotions on very specific times. It's not like you just play a song and have an emotion. No. In North Indian classical music, they consider the time of day. Is it raining outside? What hour of day is it? They consider so many things because it's considered alive. Very different than even jazz and other types of music. So that's one discipline. Also, my time in India, I learned mantras. I did the kirtan band, so I learned a lot of mantras and the power of mantra. I also do some different kinds of North American chants, some Aboriginal chants. And then what I've been getting into lately is what I don't know the terminology for it, so I just call it shamanic invocation. But what that means is getting out of the way of my judgments in relationship to sound, okay? And really allowing the freedom of that expression, no matter what, to come through. I have found that to be extremely powerful. And when I'm doing a one-on-one let's say I'm doing a vocal empowerment with someone, okay, someone who's having a hard time expressing their authenticity, I'll have them do that exercise in order to get out of their mind, to really allow that creative connection to come through vocally without the filters of judgment, shame, fear, all that stuff that keeps us all small. Okay. So when Sarah and I create this beautiful soundscape, different people, depending on where they're situated, have different types of journeys. For some, it's just a relaxing moment and they just have a moment of quietness. And maybe it's all they need is a parasympathetic state to be acted out so they can heal their body and just have some peace. Okay. It's not usually that simple. But for some people, if that's where they are, no problem, no judgment, you know. But for some people, they're looking for something much deeper. They're looking for meaning. They're finding repetition of their wounds seen in their relationships. So they're going after things to have great shift. They want a deeper connection with, they think sometimes others, but really it's a deeper connection with themselves. So they're seeking depth. You know, they're seeking freedom from these things that bind them. So we provide that kind of situation, that kind of experience.
It sounds like you're going to the origins of sound.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I agree with you what you're saying because, you know, I think my relationship with sound right now is just unlimited, you know, and it's almost like I'm afraid to define it because if I define it, then it kind of keeps it into one area. And I can't tell if it's past, present, future, you know, it doesn't even matter. I just know what's happening substantially right now. And it's amazing. Last months of sessions that I've done have been categorically different, you know, exceptionally strong, deep, and liberating for the people that sit in front. You know, not so much in community. When I do the big community events, it's one thing and it's, you know, it has its place. But I'm talking about the intimate sessions where I have like maybe one or two or three people here in front of me, you know, where I can dive deep into them, their process, and really support their particular journey. So, yeah, it's been truly, truly amazing. And I feel so grateful, you know, so grateful to be a part of this work.
So, can you dive in a little bit about being visited by the light beings, the six light beings?
Sure. Okay, so the first one I had was when I was about 7 years old. I'll talk about the six lightnings in a minute, but the first one I had when I think I was either 6 or 7. As I mentioned, I had a Christian background. So what came to me in this vision was this being in what it looked like a white cloak, and they had just a white light face. I could not see their face. It just was a white light. For some reason, I assumed it was Jesus because that's what I had known as divinity at that time. And I had carried that thought with me for till I was in my 20s. And only later did I consider that it could have been something other than that. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't even matter. In that dream, this being took me inside of a temple. And in that temple, we went into another dream. Okay. So in the dream, I went into another dream. They showed me things where people were experiencing their own reality. And now, remind you, I'm only a 6 or 7 year old kid, so I have no idea what this stuff means. But this is what was going on. People were experiencing the reality from their own perspective, and then they were attacking. You know, if someone would get too close to them, they would attack. They would strike at them because they were in fear that the other person was going to attack them. But they're projecting their own experience and creating that very thing, that very dynamic. In today's spiritual terminology, we call that projection. Okay. But back when I was a child, which was about 50 something years ago, okay, we didn't have that kind of idea. At least it wasn't in the circles that I ran in, and even into early adulthood, we didn't have that thought of what is projection? I don't know. We didn't think like that. But that's what was shown. You know, so I was shown that relating to this particular time period, that we would be projecting onto one another, attacking each other because of our own experience. So that was that. And, you know, I was shown some other things as well, and some things that I don't really want to mention because I don't know how to articulate them quite yet. Okay. Another early childhood experience was that I had gone through, I was at some plane. I can't even say what it was. I was at some place, some dimension, something, but I was going through the sensation of density. And the density relative to where I was considered painful. And not because there was pokes and prods and causing sensations of actual pain, but it was just the density itself was uncomfortable. I remember that. It was uncomfortable. And out from that density, I emerged and I remember seeing a huge pile of material, stuff that I could not identify. And it was just overwhelming. This is a vision that I've had several times from childhood till about my 20s or early 30s. And I still don't know the definition of it all, but I'm starting to wonder if that was my soul coming into material nature, into this realm, and I don't know. In the end, there are some things that I still don't understand. Like there was an R with a crown on it and something dealing with wood, but that I don't yet. Okay. It hasn't been revealed to me quite yet. Now, the one thing that I think you touched on was the six beings. So the six beings of light, I was brought into this area. It was a dark, dark area, but these six beings of light, they were just like light. It was kind of round masses of light. They told me that I'm part of their family. What I do remember distinctly was they told me I was neither male nor female. Okay. And I don't know what to do with that. I still don't know what to do with that. I just say, okay, whatever that means. I don't know. But those are some of the things that experiences that I've had. And then early on, in my 20s, and my ex-wife, Tiana, she can attest to this, but I had many visions and experiences with entities, UFOs, so much that I really would freak out. And I thought I was going to be taken. I had a lot of fear at that time, a lot of fear. And I would experience these things. One time I woke up and had all this substance on me. One time I woke up and had these markings, look like a hexagon on me. And, my wife at the time, she didn't know quite how to deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I just remember I didn't want to be taken away, even though I was seeing so many unusual things. And I was part of these groups, that had special tasks to do. I remember in this one thing, this one being, the arms were moving in like a wavy way that I couldn't even understand. It's like, whoa, but just seeing the beauty of that movement was so mesmerizing that it in itself transmitted so much information, beyond the word types of information. But here's something strange that my ex-wife and I both experienced together. One night, an entity came and it looked like what we now describe as a gray or whatever you want to call it. And I was freaking out. She woke up, she saw it. And, because we come from a Vaishnava tradition, we studied Hinduism, well, not Hinduism, but Vaishnava faith. She called that Nrsimhadev, which is like the protective entity, the protective entity. And at that point, it went away. I had no more. Now I long for it. It's like, oh my gosh, how much richness did I pass by because of my fear? And sometimes I now long for them to please come back to me. Now it's a time I want to experience with you again. So that's something that also occurred during my lifetime so far. But things are happening to me now that are very different. So I'm having a lot of different types of experiences. The more that I find my own relationship with divinity, the more I see the power in other people as well. Yesterday when I was going through that experience, I looked over at my wife and realized, oh my God, she's freaking ass awesome. She has so much divinity in her. I could see the divinity in her as well. It wasn't just about me having no, I saw it in her. It's like, oh my gosh. So I'm actually really excited for all of us, for every person on this planet. And I think the key is to be willing. Okay. We don't have to leave our life. We don't have to get out of our comfort zone, but if we can, it's very helpful. But if we're willing to be open to face these moments, to embrace what is truly uncomfortable, there is just so much richness available to each one of us.
Yeah, I love that. So when I was 7, I had a near-death experience and was in a coma for some time. And the beings of light, that's why I brought that up. I was literally with these other beings. I knew they were angelic of some form. Again, I was 7, but they were androgynous. They were androgynous beings. And one of them is with me still. That was the presence I felt in the barn, was one of my guides. And there was 11 of them, and I was the 12th. So they sent me back here. And it took me 7 years to really become back embodied in the darkness. But for people listening, like the ghost in the darkness, our greatest treasures are actually there. We have more power over them. And invocation, because I have worked with a shaman, Elder Melodoma Somé, for 10 years plus until he transitioned into the ancestor realm. But invoking, you can invoke and bring back and be in sacred space and know you have the power to call back in those beings that have come to you for messages. They show them in different ways. That's just my experience. So I can totally relate. And sounds, like different tonalities of sounds resonate with different fields of light and playing
Yes.
fields. That's
Yes.
why I brought that up. And one of the beings that came to me, I don't remember where I was. And part of it is from my near death experience and the coma and all the things. I have the ability to go back at will simultaneously. That's how I do psychic surgery, which I don't like that word. I go with subtle energies so I can move things energetically. There was a whole point to my story. It's like I don't need a plant medicine. I don't need anything
Right.
to get me there. I
Right.
do it organically. I always have, and I have done ayahuasca. I've done, but they don't affect me like they do other people. So it's quite interesting. And I don't judge. I have no judgment there. Like I get it. I get its purpose. It's medicine, right? Because it's
Yeah.
medicine. But there was a reason I brought this up about the beings of light. So what happens for me is when I come into the cycle of time on the earth plane. So my death happened like say December 15th. So every year come December 15th to the 17th, I literally go into the other world for like a month and then I come back in at the end of that time because time is fluid. It's not the same there as here. That's just something. But this is my experience. I don't think all death experiences are like this. But yeah, so those beings are androgynous. And
Wow.
the one that stayed with me, he actually had the Star of David, but yet it's the Merkabah. So it's kind of the combo of the sacred geometries. And this is where I was going. This one being that came, he had markings all over his body, like sigils and signs and rune, like all the things, right? And for I didn't know what those were. And I remember being covered in like a cloth on like a cot and the people putting us in the sacred space, or I don't know, this was in my dream space. We were supposed to stay under this cloth and not peek out. And I remember this being coming at me with all these markings and like coming up, and it felt weird. And then all of a sudden it was almost like it was going to suck the life out of me. And then I literally pushed the cloth off and was like, what? Like, I just called it out. Like, what are you doing? What's going on? Like, and all the other cots, the people had like, poof, they sunk in, like disappeared. And my little being and he took off. It felt like a he, but I knew it had a family. Like it was this whole thing going on. And at the end, I was trying to save this being because the others were coming after him because they didn't understand the energy of it. That's a long descriptive of when you brought up the sign on your arm. That's
You know,
for that.
I want to mention something that a phrase that you also said, prefacing the statement that you just made. You said a few times, well, this is just my experience. Okay. I want to change that. It's not just your experience. Your experience was amazing. It's not just a small thing, it's a huge thing. I remember before I had my experiences, Tanya, that sometimes I would hear these stories and go, yeah, 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 right, right, right. Okay, I can't relate. After I experienced my own divinity in such a way that was so esoteric, now when I hear these stories, I have a whole set of appreciation for the things that people experience. My judgments for them are not the same. I'm like, tell me more, because I know that maybe it appears one way to someone else or whatever. It's hard to really imagine unless you've actually been there, right? If we've never been in the ocean, and someone describes the ocean, there's no way we can, it just sounds like gibberish.
Absolutely. So the biggest reason I said that is I've met other people that have had near death experiences. they're
Uh-huh.
not the same as mine. And I
Right.
get it.
Yes.
That's what I was meaning when I
Gotcha.
said that, from
Yeah.
that label, if you will. So this
Yeah.
is great. So what do you feel, or what do you think stops people from finding their own gifts, their own magic, their own light, their own stuff?
A lot of it's their conditioning, the
Mm.
conditioning that they had, their environment when they were kids. I really believe that we're all trying to do the best we can from where we're situated. And if we just go back to our last generation, the generation before that, everybody was messed up. No one had a clue. We did not honor children as people. The thing with women, okay, oh my God, oh my gosh. You know what I'm saying? We're just starting to break out of that now, but even like the way we treat birth control to me is so freaking strange. It's just like, what? What? And we think it's normal, right? And if you speak against it, it's like, well, who are you? But no, 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 no. So ah, I think it's just been over time that we've learned these things, and then fear. And then we're conditioned to validate ourselves from external sources. And that's, I think, one of the hugest things. Like when people come and they want to get free and we do that vocal empowerment stuff, or they want to come in touch with their shamanic abilities, what I call shamanic abilities, and really it's just abilities, period. I just call it that. But what gets in the way is their judgment of themselves, shame, guilt, all those things. I can't. Do you know how many people believe that they're not creative? That I would say several people, like maybe 70 or 80% come and believe that they're not musical. Okay. They have that sincere, oh, I'm not musical at all. I'm not very musical. I can't play an instrument. 100% of every single client that has come through my door walks away a musician. They find something that they had no idea. Okay, it's who we all are. Now, the reason why, because they're not singing like some contemporary star. They're not singing as well as their sister. Okay, they're not good enough for the choir. Fuck that. Excuse my language. Fuck that. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. Okay, we're talking about showing up for yourself. The reason why you do it is to empower you. It's not to perform. You know what I'm saying? Performance, yes, if you have a great voice and you can perform, wonderful. Okay, no judgment on that either. But really, it's for you. There are certain things on this planet as a human being that and some really simple things, if you access, it will help you so much develop these things, like breathing, right? Simple, right? We all breathe. But if we can put attention to our breathing in a quiet space, and I'm not talking about going to some class and learning all these breathing techniques, and those are all great, but I'm talking about God-given, just as you are right here, natural. You do that, you will benefit. Breathing, sitting in silence, putting your feet on the earth, being in nature, mindfulness practices, trying to observe without conditioning. Okay, try to see and embrace other perspectives, like the idea of hierarchy. Okay, we think there's hierarchy. Think about that. That's just bullshit. Okay, why do we value a whale? We value a whale. A whale is so huge, right? But we don't give it the same equivalent to a minnow because of size. What is that? What is that? My son, who is 6 years old right now, he doesn't even know what race is. He has no clue. He never asked about it. Okay. I know that I have a Chinese and Japanese heritage. Okay. My wife she's Hispanic and some other things as well. We never mentioned any of that to him. He does not see color. So, it's just our conditioning and that keeps us small. And then we all are searching for love and we want to be liked. So we do. We reach out to community because that's the way that we've been taught on how to get it. But what I know, and I imagine that it's not out there. It's right here inside your own self. That is the real shit. Anything out there is not real. It's not sustaining. Okay. I don't need anybody to love me. Why? Because it's inside here. Yeah. And then I can love anytime that I want. I can have love because I am love. I was at an airport with Sarah and doing this on purpose, looking at a stranger who didn't even see me, and I was loving him, imagining all the beautiful possibilities and potentials and everything that all those moments and giving love. He never knew I existed because it didn't matter. I did not need reciprocation to experience deep love with another. Huge.
It's really where the magic is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Something else you said, it brought me up when I was in Mongolia with some people, and we rode to the reindeer people in the West Taiga. And one of the people in the group made a comment that this young girl, she was probably maybe 13, I'm not sure, 10, 13, doesn't really matter. But one of the people in our group made a comment that she was mentally challenged, something like that. And I just looked at this person and I said, no, she's not. She's indigenous. She hasn't been cultured or conditioned. I was like, we're aliens to her. And like, I was kind of upset that this person had made that comment because it's like, no, she's a beautiful soul, but still innocent and hasn't gone
Well,
through the conditioning.
and that reflects their lack of awareness, because that judgment, all the people that we think are strange that have like autism and all the stuff, guess what, everybody, those people are special. Maybe you can't relate to the way that they are. That's your problem. But they have much more to offer. The kids coming up these days are hypersensory. Okay. My son is like that. He has sensory things that Sarah and I, we don't know how to deal with. Okay, but that's not him. That's us. That's our. We're searching constantly. How do we adjust? How do we adjust? How do we allow him to emerge while trying to keep everything safe? We don't want to have broken stuff, but again, that's our self-interest. And we're constantly trying to struggle with that. But we know that who he is, if he can emerge his true spirit, that is the kind of people we need right now. We don't need robots. Enough of the robotic thinking, the sheep-like type of mentality. So yes to our children. And the people on the streets who seem crazy, guess what? A lot of them are hypersensitive, experiencing other dimensions, and it looks like crazy. The people out there talking to themselves, okay? Shh, you guys, I'm not you guys, but a lot of us have no idea. We just judge them. Oh, they're just crazy and homeless. Look how dirty they are. Their feet. Okay, and we set them aside. If you go back in time, that's how a lot of the shamans were actually procured, is through those kind of odd behaviors. So time, place, and circumstance, and again, get past the mental filters and see what's available. And holy cow, here we go.
Yeah. Elder Melodoma Somé, who I worked with, he actually worked with a lot of people with like what we would label as mental illness or schizophrenia, whatever. And he actually just said, no, those in our culture, those were the shamans, like
Yeah.
birthing anew, the medicine people. I mean, it's amazing. It's just initiation, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so perspective. It's all perspective. But I mean, I think what's magical is like my near death experience. I I was like tell everyone I was blessed with death at a young age because I went back to get the memo, right? I didn't come in with all my filters so I could protect myself basically from in this dimension and knowing where I do and don't belong. And even people I work with have all come through vision. Like I know they're the one. That's why I worked with Elder Melodoma. I was so excited when he finally landed in Utah. And I just went right up next to him and said, I've been waiting for you for a very long time. And then we were like, two peas in a pod there until he transitioned. It was great. So yeah, I love that. So can you give my audience, my listeners, can you elaborate a little bit on some of the techniques that you use to really assist and help others kind of discover who they are and their authenticity?
Sure. So one of the things I mentioned was the vocal empowerment, which is huge. I get a drum and then I'll just have them kind of just start the drum, beating it. And then sometimes we'll go into maybe an emotion that they're having, very specific emotion they're having, and we'll explore that. And then we'll give that emotion a voice and we'll do it without words. So their mind doesn't get in the way of trying to say something. And the objective is just to express your emotion. Okay. And it's usually something they're playing the drum. They go like, it starts off real mild, real guarded, real cautious. Okay. No problem. We're going to allow that just to get the experience. Then over about a minute or so, I ask them to go deeper. And then eventually I ask them to really root down into the lower parts, like their tribal parts, and really just free up and express that emotion. And it can be anger, it can be joy, it can be sorrow. It can be all the emotions, and to give a voice to each one of those emotions. Okay. So that's one methodology. Let's see that sometimes we have people that don't know parts of themselves. They're operating always in the mode of goodness. And it's great. They've had a good life. They're always taken care of. They're not outwardly, overtly mean or angry, but they don't know their depths of their inner anger. So I'll go there with them. And try to have them invoke that part of themselves. When they do, it's like very, very healing and releasing. They're amazed. They don't even know they had that parts within, because it was suppressed or not required at this time. Sometimes those in the mode of goodness, they can become a little judgmental of people who have less or people who struggle. They're just not familiar with it as all. So that's one of the techniques that I use. Another technique is the perspective we spoke about, to really have them go through the eyes of the opposition. I'll ask him, where's your resistance? And this, what do you mean by that? Where's my resistance? Well, I said, look into the world. Who do you look at? You go, no way to. Okay. Oh no, the narcissist. Oh no, the jealous man. Oh no, Donald Trump. Okay, or whatever. Where's your resistance? And then I'll have them see, now, is it possible that that is a potential within you? And they're first like, no way. I hate that stuff. I hate those qualities. But here's the truth. We are all potential energy. And any one of us who had to walk in the path of abuse, suffering, no family, we could be tweaked instantaneously. We could end up like so many of the deviant personalities that we judge and perceive out there in the world. It's just we have, for some reason, been blessed. We don't have that perspective. We have love around us, maybe, or we have some inner strength, but not everybody is resourced the same way. So, that ability to see what we resist and be open to the possibility that that potential lies within, if we can really embrace that, it changes our relationship with what we resist. So a shift in perspective does not mean we have to believe in the perspective, but if you can shift in your perspective, there are things to extract from that experience, wealth of information, all kinds of things to draw upon. Okay, that's another thing. I like to help plant seeds of who they already are. These are called reference points. So that if they can have 1 second, 1 moment of a particular type of thing, then they can access that thing again. And this is why I was talking about the hallucinogenics during childhood, because I had accessed things and then dismissed them early on. But those are reference points. They can be gone back to and nourished, and like you said about the hallucinations and now you can do it on your own. I totally agree. Yesterday, when I went through that, there was no intoxication whatsoever. I have not done intoxication for a little bit now. No intoxication. And I was fully there with it. It felt actually more empowering because there wasn't any confusion. Oh, could it be the intoxication? Because that was always a question. Could it have just been my intoxication that I saw those things or did those things? And so I totally agree with you. But those intoxicant moments when I did, they are reference points. So sometimes we'll look for reference points. That's another technique that I do. One of the biggest things that I like to do for people to help them develop their intuition, their sensitivity, their psychic abilities, is help them with their creative process. Okay. To me, the creative process is huge. And if you think about it, what are we doing? When we're creating, we're searching for some kind of thing that we consider beautiful, whatever that means to us. Maybe it's the way that a certain sound is. Maybe it's a rhythm in a poem, the way that we're going to put certain phrases together. Maybe it's the strokes on a canvas. Maybe it's the way that we're going to cook a certain meal and how we're going to really be present, whatever that is. But when we're doing that, we're searching for some assimilation of beauty, and we're reaching to something outside of ourselves. We don't know what it is. But we know we want beauty. We know we want something that starts to represent that formation beauty. So we allow it to come down, And as a musician, here's how it looks. Maybe it's 3 notes. Okay. Maybe it's these 3 notes that for some reason resonate. Oh yeah, that's interesting the way those notes, or maybe it's a little phrase in the words, or who knows what it is for people. But point is, you're drawing, you're almost like channeling from the creative collective into this moment through you, through your representation of energy and expressing that creativity. So it's like you're channeling. So by practicing that, it increases your abilities for intuition, sensitivity, psychic abilities, all kinds of things. So that's another thing that I do. So those are some of the tools that I really like. I also do some mindfulness things, like how can you sit there and observe something without using judgment? And it's so tough, like an example might be, well, I'm looking over there, I see a man and he's angry. And so the question comes, well, how do you know he's angry? Isn't that a judgment? Well, look at him. Okay, he's got a furrowed brow, his face is like this, his body's like this. Maybe he is angry. Maybe he's constipated. We don't really know unless we get into him. Native American Indians, when you look at some of their faces, they look very serious, right? Very stoic, very serious, but fully present, fully loving, fully welcoming beings. So you can't really go off the eyes. The eyes are so limited. The human experience, what our senses can perceive, is on such a small scale. We know this scientifically. This is not just jibber jabber. Like the light and the sound, we only experience a certain amount, this small, compared to what's really out there. We already know that, and that's what we know. There's much more beyond that. There's so much, much more beyond all of that we can't even imagine. When they split that photon, whatever time it was, and sent it, they split this photon, right? Sent one side to 7 miles this way, another part of it 7 miles that way. They affected the one photon, and instantaneously the other one was affected. Not even linear, instantaneously. What does that say? Okay. If we did, like, say, come from this one bang, or whatever you want to call it, at one point, we were all connected. And so now that we're separated, we're still just like the photon. We experience each other. Your thoughts count. My thoughts count. Everything that we think, feel, and say, it affects all of us at the same time, the collective. That's how powerful we are. So those are some of the tools that I like to engage in and share with people.
I love it. So, is there anything else that your heart is dying to share with my audience? Like,
Uh, you
what do
know,
you really want to let them know?
I think I've really shared my heart right now. And, I'm working on a few little things. I'm working on some projects and things. I'm working on my new podcast, and I'm writing a little book. And that's not the exciting part for me. Here's what's exciting. The exciting part for me is this, that each and every one of us, truly, this is not bullshit, okay? We all have so much more than I believe that we realize. Please don't take my word for it, but find out for yourself. Find out for yourself if this is real, okay? Try to get away from your mental filters, from your judgments of good and bad and right and wrong, all that. Sit with yourself. Trust in who you are for real. Trust in your connection. It doesn't mean you have to be a saint, because that's just not even true for any of us, really. We all have humanness, and we all have the ability to make mistakes. Okay. Even Jesus, right? In the story of Jesus, even he was bewildered and when said, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Okay. Shows he was in a moment of illusion. There is no forsaken. We're always connected to divinity. There's no separation. So even a divine being like Jesus can be an illusion. Buddha too. We know that. We know the stories. Okay. So that's what I'm really excited about and passionate about, is people finding out the truth of who they are. And this is something that's also needed right now, because our world is suffering. A lot of our brothers and sisters are out there, they're really immersed in this idea of separation, and it's causing them a lot of suffering. And hey, their suffering is my suffering. That war in Ukraine is my war here. I may not experience all the details of it, but it affects me. It affects us all.
Absolutely. That's frequency sounds and energies bubbling through the cosmos in the soup. So, with all of that, I will have all of Rasa's connections in the show notes. And I'm sure this episode inspired you in some magical way. And if so, please tag out the Tanya D on Instagram. To keep this momentum flowing, the Musing with Tanya D podcast, the link to donate to this show, feeling into your heart. And I will also see you on the other side. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Blessings.